But then came the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis on May 25th, 2020. That event and the ensuing protests have dominated the news over the last 2 weeks, so you can't have missed all this, and I don't need to elaborate on it. My original mission hasn't changed. I need to see what I say to know what I think. And as I see it today, June 12th, 2020, there are two very large intertwined questions. The first is, what does the killing of George Floyd and the reaction really mean? The second is, what are we going to do? In answer to the question, what does the killing of George Floyd mean? It means that we can no longer stick our heads in the sand. As individuals and as a country, we can no longer shrug off killings by police, and we can no longer ignore the dire predicament of so many Black Americans. We have to seek the truth. Call it structural racism or whatever you think to be the right term. George Floyd's death makes it very clear that Black Americans have been and continue to be at a huge disadvantage. The Pew Research Foundation found in a survey that 87% of Blacks and 61% of whites say that Black people are treated less fairly than whites in dealing with the police and by the criminal justice system as a whole. In the case of Minneapolis, it is little wonder. The protests in Minneapolis have also been fueled by memories of several Black men killed by police officers who either never faced charges or were acquitted. New York Times did research based on the data from the city of Minneapolis itself. It shows that the police are 7 times more likely to use force of some type on Black citizens as they are on white citizens. Look at this. In the U.S., police kill a high number of people of all ethnicities. The Guardian compiled a database of killings by police in 2015 that compared the U.S. to other countries. Here's a sample. In the first 24 days of 2015, police in the U.S. fatally shot more people than police did in England and Wales combined over the past 24 years. Police in the U.S. have shot and killed more people in every week in 2015 than are reportedly shot and killed by German police in an entire year. Police in the U.S. fatally shot more people in March 2015 than police in Australia officially reported during a span of 19 years. And George Floyd was not shot, so he would not be included in the statistics. A 2019 proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences states, police violence is a leading cause of death for young men in the United States. Over the life course, about 1 in every 1,000 Black men can expect to be killed by police. It goes on to say, violent encounters with the police have profound effects on health, neighborhoods, life chances, and politics. Policing plays a key role in maintaining structural inequalities between people of color and white people in the United States. End quote. We all know this. These structural inequalities are quantified in the research findings by the Pew Research Report in 2016. By large margins, Black adults are more likely than whites to say that Blacks are treated less fairly than whites across key areas of American life. These key areas include healthcare, education, income, home ownership, and wealth. 2 charts you see display income disparities from 1967 to 2014 and wealth disadvantage from 1983 to 2014. You can look at education, home ownership, health status, and just about any other demographic or economic statistic and see the same disparity. I have not experienced any of this because I'm not Black, but I can see all of this is basically true. I can also see that it's time for all Americans to come together to fix the problem for the good of the country. Actually, fix is the wrong word. As Samuel Kimbriel, research fellow at the Center of Theology and Philosophy, states in a Washington Post article June 5th, healing is the correct word. He says, above all, the goal must be healing. If healing is to happen, the nation, and particularly its wider and wealthier communities, must engage with the substance of the frustration being expressed. He goes on to say, and there is profound substance. This wave of protest started in response to a handful of incidents, the killings of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and above all, Floyd. These specific situations have combined to touch a nerve. bringing to the surface pervasive frustration with America's social contract when it comes to race. This is not an issue of the past. It is a deep, persistent, and current wound." End quote. The substance is the profound inequality and festering police abuses that maintain it. So what are we going to do? I am not sure. It probably will take a very long time, and it will be hard. It will certainly take leadership. In broad terms, I can see three things. The first, a genuine acknowledgement that as a country, we have a problem. And it will also require the collective will to address it. It is encouraging that in the Pew survey, 61% of white respondents acknowledged that blacks are treated unfairly by the U.S. justice system. Recent polls show that a majority of citizens support the protesters. So maybe we have reached a point of acknowledgement at least. The second thing is some kind of policing reform. This will be difficult, but it can start now at the local level. If it has started in Minneapolis, the city council vowed to basically eliminate the current police department and start anew. In Louisville, the city council passed Breonna's law, which bans no-knock warrants. Maybe reform starts with a new definition of the role of police to emphasize that the police force mission is to protect its citizens. Police should not be the catch-all for non-criminal matters. Black citizens should get some say in what emerges in their own communities. Excessive militarization of police forces should stop. Above all, there has to be transparency, there has to be accountability. The third requirement gets to the real substance of the problems. The solutions require more government-sponsored investment to black communities to improve education, infrastructure, and home ownership. Nothing will improve without government help. Commercial interests are going to see risks that they are not willing to take. Ultimately, this will take leadership at the national level, something we don't have right now. The president has been divisive and called on the U.S. military, the most lethal force in the world, to attack our own citizens. He encourages racism and bigotry. This is not just me saying this. Admiral Mike Mullen, the 17th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, wrote in the June 2nd, 2020 Atlantic. The title is, "I Cannot Remain Silent. Our fellow citizens are not the enemy and must never be so." Admiral Mullen says, "It sickened me yesterday to see security personnel, including members of the National Guard, forcibly and violently clear a path through Lafayette Square to accommodate the president's visit outside St. John's Church." James Mattis, the esteemed Marine General and former Secretary of Defense, said, "I have watched this week's unfolding events angry and appalled." Mattis writes, "The words equal justice under law are carved in the pediment of the United States Supreme Court. This is precisely what protesters are rightly demanding." Other generals have joined in. General Martin Dempsey, another retired chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, also spoke out this past Sunday. He said the president's inflammatory language and threats to use military troops to respond to the George Floyd protests across the country this week have strained Americans' relationship with the U.S. military. Newsweek reports that more than 280 retired Foreign Service and military officials released a letter to President Donald Trump Friday saying they were alarmed by calls from the president and some political leaders for the use of U.S. military personnel to end legitimate protests in cities and towns across America. I want to show you two pictures. The picture on the left is from Christianity Today and shows George Floyd with his ministry partners in Houston, where he lived for most of his life. The picture on the right shows the president after peaceful protesters were cleared from his path by force, just so he could walk across the street to St. John's Church and hold up a Bible for a photo op. Who do you think is the genuine Christian? What would a true leader say to invoke a healing process? For now, it is up to all of us as individuals to put aside our convenient assumptions that justify the status quo. Look ourselves in the mirror and ask, what is the truth here? It is fitting to ask what guidance the Bible might offer. Perhaps Ephesians 4:25, which says, Wherefore, putting away lying, speak every man truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another. And Ephesians 4:29, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers.